Hello, and welcome to Lemieux Reviews, where we bring you the stories you may not yet have heard of. My name is Lemieux, and today we are diving into Once and Future, Part 4. When we left off in Part 3, Gran was trying to assassinate Elaine's Galahad. That's where this story picks up. So let us dive into the story of medieval fantasy, of horrors, and of a hero's quest. This time around, for our cover, we have one of the main villains, Elaine, holding a sword reflecting a mother and her two children, in front of a massive church on a field of dead trees. As always, the creators of this comic are Karen Gillan, Dan Mora, and Tamara Bonneville. Released by Boom Studios in November of 2019. I'd like to thank Vault of Midnight for the story. Outside the abbey in the dead of night, clouds blocking out the sun, Rose stands holding the candle, still lit as instructed. Two cops spot her and think she might be up to no good. She tries to reassure them her actions are legitimate and rambles about the paperwork she has. She has nerves getting to her the whole. Galahad is knighted and given a task by the king to find and bring him the Holy Grail. Other knights are skeptical of his ability to succeed, but Elaine is one step ahead of them all already, having set up someone to play the Fisher King. Gran, hearing this, realizes it's now or never and starts to take her shot. Galahad is knighted and given a task by the king to bring him the Holy Grail. The other knights are skeptical of his ability to succeed, but Elaine is already one step ahead, having set up to have someone play the role of the Fisher King. Gran, realizing this is her only chance, begins to take the shot. A shot rings out in the other world. All heads turn, but no one is harmed due to the fact that Duncan had moved and threw off the shot because of his sense of honor. Once more, Arthur orders his knights to destroy them, and once more they are forced. The world begins to bend around them as they try to make it back to the real world, the light of the candle leading them to the entrance as they struggle to reach. While Gran and Duncan are in the church, they can hear two voices coming from outside. It's the cops trying to disarm Rose when Duncan and Gran burst out of the church. The cops, seeing they have weapons, point theirs at them. Gran tries to distract the police while also telling Rose to put out the candle, but it is already too late, as one of Arthur's undead knights slips through from the other world and immediately slices through a policeman who had been frozen in terror from the sight of the monster. Duncan, ever the hero, tries to pull the second cop away, but he is too late, the cop getting pierced through the chest by the sword. Rose finally extinguishes the candle, and the knight is pulled back into the Fey world, leaving its carnage in its wake. Rightly so, they are freaking out in the car. With a reassuring word, Gran calms Rose, explaining that people like Rose are never meant to be in the field. They are the people that deal with the aftermath. But Rose, still questioning her place in all. Bridget explains to Rose that she is now the person who gives them all their missions to stop the Fae and the stories. They now speak on their destination. Galahad's grandfather is a man who was shot in his nether regions, and because of this, he can play the Fisher King, a man also wounded. Duncan asks a good question, though. How can you make a person? As Bridget speaks on how they made Galahad. Turns out Elaine is Galahad's mom, and that she had found a Lancelot to be the father, and raised the child to think like the story character would, because it makes it easier to be a part of the story that way. They plow through the gate, not stopping till they get to their destination, where they get out all the guns and the explosives, ready to take out the whole house. And Rose makes a point. How did Bridget know where the house was and where they needed to go? Bridget is about to explain, but stops as the whole world around them changes. They make a mad dash to the house. Once reaching the door, Duncan kicks it in with such force that it explodes into many different pieces. The show of force impresses Rose, and they call out to the Fisher King, but the Fisher knows Gran and refuses to come out, thinking she will shoot him. Rightly so, because in fact she does open fire on him, knowing that if he is gone, no one can lead them to the Grail. But as we see, in Bridget's eyes, the Fae and Galahad are still coming in. And there in the doorway entrance to the house stands an abomination and Galahad. Bridget tries to go after the king, but is dragged by Duncan up the stairs. On the second floor, the group opens fire. Galahad is protected by the undead armored knight. He finds the Fisher King and is pointed to a door. Galahad, opening the door, finds a new strange light behind it. And beyond that light, before him, behind the door, is a giant castle sitting in front of mountains. It is a grand structure made of all black stone, spotted with many towers. Looking upon this, Galahad feels a sense of destiny. They can feel that Galahad has found his way to the castle in the Feywild, and now move on the Fisher King. But Rose's suspicion gets to her, and she knows Bridget isn't telling them everything, like her connection to these people. The Fisher King interrupts, and now everyone knows he is Bridget's husband, Duncan's grandfather. Bridget views the man as a monster, but he sees Bridget as a hypocrite, that she did the same thing with Duncan, made him into a Percival, his middle name even being Percy. The Fisher King explains that Duncan's whole life has been laid out so that Gran could get to the Grail if needed, but they would need a Fisher King to do so. And he pulls a gun and sticks it to his head. And then he pulls the trigger, ending himself, and appears to stop them from having any way to get after Galahad. Bridget apologizes to Duncan. She had always hoped he never had to find out how awful his family was. And that is where we close out part 4 of Once and Future. Duncan had found, and just as quickly lost, a grandfather, found out Elaine is his mother, and Galahad and he are brothers. As one of the big twists to the comic, finding out you are fighting against your own family and your whole life has been planned out is pretty deep. Art is on point as always, and the story is hitting all the major points while not faltering to deliver on the horror or the funny little moments, and rough moments such as found and lost family moments. How one must feel knowing that you are fighting against family and that they have done terrible things in the name of a cause is just superb storytelling. And then we get the bits of lore they added in this issue, the biggest one being the Fisher King, a king in Arthurian legend, often portrayed by King Pelles or Bronn. The king suffering from a persistent wound, who constantly fishes for comfort, thus the nickname. Such comfort coming from the Grail question, usually asked by the knight Galahad or Percival, and with the king healing would cure the land which had suffered with him. All pretty closely followed in this issue, from the wound to having both knights. And that, everyone, was Lemieux Reviews, part 4 of Once and Future. We hope you like, share, subscribe, and if you have any comments, leave them down below. With that, we wish you a good night.